before I begin, I just want to give a quick shout out to GSV. You know, it's incredibly exciting to build one of these companies. It's often very hard to build one of these companies, and one of the things you really want is you want people who you feel like have your back, who you trust, and you can have a really great conversation with. That's how I feel about our relationship with GSV. In fact, I felt so much that way about that when my good friend Jason Rosenthal was looking to raise money, I encouraged him to talk to GSV, and I was pleased that they're working together. So what these guys are doing is really working, certainly working well for us. Okay, so I am not on the right slides. And now I am. Great. I'm going to talk to you about PayNearMe. We're in a massive market that is hidden in plain sight. That market is bill presentment and payment, and actually more, as you'll see. There are in the United States 25 billion bills that are presented per year. And by the way, that doesn't include payments that are happening in the gaming industry and commerce, people paying for visas, all kinds of other stuff. It is a gigantic market that you probably aren't thinking about a lot. And yet, if you look at just a handful of some of the companies who have a significant portion of their business in this, you've got FIS at 24 billion of market cap, Fiserv at 23, Western Union at almost 10, ACI at 2.4, MoneyGram actually is worth more than this because of debt. There's at least $2 billion worth of market cap in the bill presentment and payment business, and almost nobody in that industry has done anything innovative in years and years and years, and for reasons you'll understand as we go through this. We participate in three segments of that business that we think are really important. The first is a business we run called PayNearMe. It is a B2B business where we turn cash into electronic payments. We announced yesterday the acquisition of a company we've actually acquired a few months ago called Prism. They provide the world's best mobile real-time bill presentment and payment system for millennials. And we are combining the back end of PayNearMe and Prism to provide services to third parties. And we made an announcement about that yesterday. What these businesses have in common is they all sit on a common financial technology platform that allows us to move money. And that platform, by the way, has taken us over 7 years to build and consumed $70 million worth of capital in the process of doing this. But one of the things we're able to do now is we are licensed as a money transmitter in 48 states, which are all the 48 jurisdictions that are required to move money around the United States. That took itself 3 years, over $3 million, and $1 million a year to maintain. Required us to get many, many different kinds of compliance certifications, et cetera. And by the way, we're also licensed as a gaming payments provider in Nevada and the Division of Game Enforcement in New Jersey. It is that platform that we built that was the combination of having sitting side by side engineers, accountants, lawyers, and compliance experts who collectively build the code integrations and processes that are the basis of that platform that allow us to run these other businesses on top and more over time that we'll be acquiring. So let's talk about them one by one because they're different and yet they all share that common platform. The first is PayNearMe, which is an electronic cash acceptance network for businesses and governments. That business does something we call cash merchant processing. So merchant processing is normally what they call when a business processes a credit card electronically. We do cash merchant processing. The reason why this is important, why it's important to turn cash into electronic payments, is that every single business and government, almost agency you can imagine, has need to process cash for the 25% of the US population that's underbanked. So we're living in a world where everything you do that you used to do face-to-face is you're doing remote. Cash does not bridge that gap. There's a need for an electronic network to do that. This is just a handful of some of the partners that we're working with, including the IRS and others. That business matters because I said 25% of the population is underbanked. They spend over $1 trillion a year. And by the way, the incumbents here are not and have not done anything innovative in a long time. So it's ripe for disruption. What this network does essentially is it takes people who have cash and they have a need to pay their rent, their utilities, their auto loans, their transportation, government services, or healthcare, and then a completely different set of people who are actually well banked but don't want to connect their bank account to their gaming account, and we bridge that gap. We have a network that basically, because those people can't hand cash to those entities directly, so we have a network that connects all of these entities together plus retail stores. And when a consumer wants to make a payment, they bring cash to the retail store. In real time, that turns into an electronic payment that's distributed out to all of these parties. So you pay in cash, they get paid electronically, and it happens in real time. So it feels to the individual like they're paying, for example, their rent in person, even though they really paid their rent at 2 a.m. at a 7-Eleven store. This is all built on top of a common platform integration layer that, when you look at it, looks the same where it plugs into us, but looks completely different where it plugs into all these different businesses. And as a result, we get scale from having common interfaces below. We get stickiness from having individual integrations at the top. And these relationships are very sticky. So it's interesting to think about us in the context of comparing to a traditional payments processor. In our world, there are no standards. No two businesses or governments plug into us the same way. Therefore, when we're integrated, there are no plug-and-play replacements for what we do. And as a result, we have essentially no churn in our merchant base. We have very sustainable margins, and we get to be profitable at a much smaller scale than a traditional payments processor. If you think about a traditional payments processor, they're in a business where everything is standards-based. As a result, there are lots of options for everybody in that industry. So if you don't like your payment processor, you can pick a different payment processor. If you don't like your new age payment processor, you can pick a different new age payment processor. If you don't like your acquiring bank, you can pick a different acquiring bank. And so if you look at these companies, what they're really good at is, what they really have to worry about is they have a very real risk of churn. They're under significant margin pressure because everybody's essentially offering the same thing. And they have to become huge in order to get profitable, which is why you see such consolidation in the payment processing industry. But if you look at a business that's under margin pressure that gets profitable at massive scale, what do they focus on? They focus on operational excellence, they focus on maintaining their EBITDA, they don't focus on innovation. In fact, they can't really afford to focus on innovation, which is why we have no known competitive threats, which is why we have this benefit of no churn with sustainable margins, and we get profitable at a much more reasonable scale. If you think about it at the payment level, we don't acquire any consumers. If you walked into a 7-Eleven store and said you want to make a PayNearMe payment, they'd have no idea what you were talking about. But if you walked in with a barcode given to you by one of these entities that we were paying, they would drive you into the store and you would make the payment. And as a result, when you look at our unit economics on a payment, we have no consumer acquisition cost, we have no receivables risk, we have no marginal processing cost, we have no fraud risk. In the PayNearMe business, we're giving about somewhere a little less than half of our revenue out to our retail partner. The rest of it is pure margin, and after paying everybody off, we're making $1.50 per transaction on average, which, by the way, all the while pricing it a third to a quarter of what Western Union and MoneyGram will charge for a payment like this. And by the way, that kind of margin is unheard of in payments. All of our cost then is in acquiring the merchant, acquiring the payees, but increasingly we're doing that through partnerships. So for example, we have a relationship with a company called AppFolio, which is a big property management software company. They have thousands of property managers on their system. Every week they add more of them. Those people sign up for PayNearMe, they join our network. The same thing happens, for example, with Xerox, which processes loan payments for the largest auto lenders in the country. They recently are bringing on board Santander for us, which is the biggest subprime auto lender. And so the important cost driver in our business, which is merchant acquiring, actually getting them on board, has been falling as we've gone from a direct model to a partner-assisted model. So when you put all this together, what we have is a business that with very rapidly growing revenues that are accelerating, because not only do we have no churn essentially in our merchant base, we have negative churn in the revenue associated with our merchant base. In other words, we could stop selling today and that revenue would continue to grow. Our sales cycles are getting shorter now that people know what we're doing, and we're going after increasingly larger accounts. So for example, when we launched Comcast, Cox called and said, hey, that's really cool, I want to do the same thing, and because they don't compete head to head, Comcast actually gets on the phone with Cox and serves as a reference. So bigger accounts, shorter sales cycles, distribution leverage through folks like AppFolio, Xerox and others, and by the way, neat market adjacencies. So when you're processing a lot of rent for, say, multifamily units, then you process rent for single family units, then you process rent for manufactured housing. The business itself has largely fixed costs because we're not going out and acquiring, paying anything to acquire consumers. And we have killer unit economics. So this is a business that, as it's moving towards scale, it generates incredible cash. Just to give you a sense of where we are in that business, we'll exit this year, and we have very good visibility into this because of that negative churn dynamic. We'll be processing over $1 billion a year, probably by the end of the Q3, beginning Q4. Doing over 5 million transactions, so people getting up and going to the store and making the payment, and doing over $10 million of revenue. That's in our first business, which is the PayNearMe business. Let's talk now about Prism Money, which is, again, built on that same fundamental platform. This is mobile real-time bill presentment and payment for millennials. So, interesting thing happens, if you search Google for millennial, you always get a picture of somebody with their phone. Which is really interesting. Well, what's true of millennials? They live on their phones, they have limited resources, they overwhelmingly do not trust banks, and by the way, they cannot afford, because they have such limited resources, to bounce checks. I don't know the last time you guys had an NSF, but they're about $35 per instance in a bank account, which probably has something to do with why people don't trust the banks. What these folks need is they need to know their balance and what they have in their bank account and what they owe in real time. They want to be able to pay on time without any penalties, and they want to avoid bank fees. So what Prism does is delivers this mobile application that lets you see all your balances and make payments and have them credit in real time and reflect on your balances. By the way, this is an incredibly well-loved product. You'll see that it has this is just on Google Play, similar stores in the Apple App Store. Very high approval ratings. And what does it do? Well, you've got all these billers that you have access to on your bank account. Prism basically slurps information out of all those accounts and presents it to you on your phone. Then if you want to make a payment, so for example, let's say you want to pay your auto loan, it sends a signal to your auto lender that causes funds to be pulled, you can see that, but money flowed from the bank account into the auto loan and then immediately updates on your phone. So you know your payment happens in real time and you know in real time what your balance is. Or if you're going to pay your utility, same thing. Funds come out and this time maybe off your credit card, you pay your utility bill and updates your phone. And in fact, if you want to pay your credit card with your bank account, you can do the same thing. So you can basically completely manage your financial life, not just looking at the information, but actually making all your payments and managing them on your phone in real time. That business is also doing quite well. The December run rate there will be processing over $360 million a year in payments and generating over 2 million transactions. And that's actually growing faster than PayNearMe itself is growing. Finally, we've got the platform services. So if you think about that, that back technology that I described, all the investment we made in being able to move that money around legally, that's a really hard problem for many people to solve. And we now have the ability through Prism and PayNearMe to process multiple tender types, not just cash, but credit cards and ACH payments. We have the ability to route payments, not just over our own rails, but over MasterCard's rails, over rails that we got from Prism, a wide range of rails or ways to route payments. And we have the ability now to present bill presentment payment. Well, you can imagine we're not the only people observing that the world is shifting to mobile and the need is shifted to real time. And so we are exposing all of this in an SDK and making it available to prepaid issuers, to personal finance management providers, to billers, to banks, and to other platform providers. And in fact, yesterday we announced a relationship with Visa, and we are bringing this to their partners so that they themselves can do bill presentment and payment, starting with prepaid, because the observation is if you're doing your bill presentment out of your prepaid account, that account lasts longer, that's much more profitable, therefore, for Visa and its issuing banks. Some milestones looking forward to there. Just in setup and prepayments, we'll have collected over $1 million by the end of this year. That's not including the revenue that's going to start generating off these businesses. So we're super excited about all three of these businesses. They're all predicated on that same platform that has taken us a tremendous amount of work to build and create. And that's what PayNearMe does with 1 minute and 40 seconds left.